Previously on The Great Game, we saw several wars begin and end. We saw that the Khanty and Kyrgyz are no longer at war, but Goryeo has declared war on Mongolia, along with the Qin dynasty having declared war on Mongolia as well. We also saw the rising momentum of Brazil, as after having captured the Argentine city of Cordoba, they marched on to the Argentine city of Salta and eventually captured that settlement as well. With the rising momentum, other powers are starting to grow wary of Brazil, as we saw the Makushi did declare war on Brazil previously, and they have started launching a full-scale invasion of Brazilian territory. We had wars in Europe, we had wars in Africa, we had wars in Central Asia, we had wars in Southern Asia, and we had wars in Australia. With the recaps being as short as they are, if there is something I have not covered in this recap, I highly recommend checking out the playlist I have put together of every episode of The Great Game thus far. With all that out of the way, let's move on to the episode. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to The Great Game. My name is Kazia, and thank you so much for continuing to support this series. Starting off our narration for the actual episode itself, we see that Brazil has made peace with Argentina, and we see that Karelia is now fighting a two-front war with both the Swedes and the Soviet Union. We do have an extra special episode for you today, as today's episode is 33 minutes long, about 10 minutes longer than the average length of every other episode. And yes, we do see that Goryeo is continuing their assaults on Mongolia, trying to push forward the cities of Erdenet and Ulaanbaatar. I think Goryeo has a really impressive force, but we're going to move on very quickly to see that England has declared war on Prussia, adding yet another front to this huge European kerfuffle as we've known it to be going on for about 500 years. Henry VIII has been sitting in his palace on the lofty British Isles for quite a while, and yet he hasn't been able to do too much because he hadn't had a proper navy yet. Now we see he does have a navy, and he is pushing that navy towards the Prussian Scandinavian colonies of Stettin and Elbing. Now you guys might not be too aware of this, but I've been keeping a close eye on England because their expansion has actually been pretty impressive. But it's been limited to the British Isles, so there's not been too much to show off until now that they have triremes and are able to send navies to the European mainland. We also do see Prussia engaging in their ongoing conflict with Yugoslavia under Josip Broz Tito. The city of Sarajevo is at 0 health. It is no more, essentially, but it has not fallen to Prussia yet due to valiant Yugoslavian defenses. We also see that the Prussian city of Magdeburg is still under siege. It has been on the verge of collapse for centuries now, but we have not quite seen it fall yet. If it falls, this could be a major gain for Yugoslavia in uniting their cities. Here, I mainly just want to show off the Qin front of the Mongolian war going on. We see that Qin has a bunch of units, but they aren't quite lined up in a great formation right now. However, we do see that quickly changing. We're going to swiftly transition over to Karelia to see that the Soviet Union is pushing towards Kemosarsky, but the Swedes, their Soviet co-conspirator in the war, have not really progressed in their assault. In fact, they're actually taking damage in Vasteras. Let's check on Lesotho, because we're probably not going to see them for a little while longer, because really the wars in South Africa have been dying down, as Maravi just doesn't seem to have much of a force to retake Mbewe. The Goryeo invasion of Mongolia is set to meet with a Mongolian counteroffensive, as President Sakyagin Obekdorj orders his soldiers to fight to the bitter end to defend their republic. From a bird's eye view, we do see that Goryeo is outnumbering Mongolia, but Goryeo does not have a lot of melee units with which to take the cities of Ulaanbaatar or Erdenet. This means that they might not actually be able to take a city immediately, and hopefully Mongolia can hold off. This just in a recent development, the Banuba have declared war on the Motu, joining Australia in their invasion of the city of Elevala in an attempt to wipe the Motu off the face of the continent. Now, one thing I really do when I record and edit this series is that I cut out a lot of footage, and you will see here, Mali is still at war with the Alawites. I've cut out a lot of footage of these two fighting, because they have been fighting for so long and no progress has really been made on either side of this war. Let's briefly transition over to Brazil to see that the Makushi are still on the offensive against Brazil. In the background we also see that Rome has made peace with Aquitaine, having lost their city of Carthago. Bernardino Jose Pedro, the leader of the Makushi, sees that the Makushi way of life cannot persist if there are colonial forces present on the mainland posing a threat to their lifestyle. Returning to Scandinavia, we see that Karelia is still fending off the Soviet Union and launching their offensive against the city of Västerås under the Swedish forces. We see that they have a settler south of Kimasharvi, which could potentially turn into a new settlement. And in fact, I believe we will see that happen within this very scene as it becomes the city of Ugarvi. This Karelian reclamation effort seeks to rebuild the Karelian state after the loss of the cities of Aunis and Utua. Uki Varnamoinen, leader of the Karelian state, is of course leading these reclamation efforts personally. Here, one of the units of the Qin army actually bugs out in their animation and loops for a bit, so we get a nice shot of the front between Qin and Mongolia. Let's turn the page back a bit to reflect on Karelia. Their defensive forces have been faltering hard lately, and we see that Kimasharvi is beginning to take damage. That said, I don't know if Soviet forces can take the city. We get our first look at North America in a long time to see that Chief Iron Jacket of the Comanche has declared war on Tecumseh and his confederation of Shawnee peoples. Neither side really fields an impressive force on the front lines of the war itself. We turn back to Southern Africa and the Lesotho city of Mbewe for a minute just to see that it has almost fully restored since the Basotho capture of the city. Let's transition over to Mongolia for a minute to see how Goryo's invasion is doing. Goryo actually looks like they have a pretty impressive force near Erdenet. They do have some melee units around the city, but I still am not 100% sure they'll be able to take the city. We also see that the Kyrgyz are expanding nearby with the cities of Tepse and Omaitora. We also see that the cities of Choivalsan and Cheongju are following Tengriism. Tengriism is the worship of Tengri, and it is a Mongolian religion based around, I believe, animism, shamanism, and it's monotheistic, which is a really interesting combination. We also see the city of Bayankongor settled. The Motu are still defending their city of Elevala on the Australian mainland, but they are taking some damage in that settlement as well. Beyond that, we see a new war declaration in the far right of the screen between Yugoslavia and Ukraine, with Ukraine being the instigator. Turning over to Yugoslavia and their invasion of Prussia, we see that Prussia is still trying to defend the city of Magdeburg, and it still doesn't look like Yugoslavia will be able to take the city, but at least they're trying now. They have 2 spearmen on the way, and the city's at 0 health. This just in a developing story, we see that the Makushi are starting to get close to the cities of Recife, and potentially they could push for Sao Paulo, but it looks like they have no forces near Porto Alegre, and they don't even have defensive forces near the city of Rewa. We also see that in this scene, Brazil has taken the city of Parana in their peace deal with Argentina. This is a major gain for them, having taken 3 cities during the war. Here we get a very close look at the Motu unit, the Lagatoi. The Lagatoi normally really gets its benefits from city-states, but they do have some extra combat abilities, such as I believe they get some bonus movement upon leaving Motu territory. Apologies if I go a bit quiet at times, my throat is starting to hurt from all this narration. Here we see a big declaration of war as the Shoshone under Chief Washakie declare war on the Shawnee under Chief Tecumseh. We know that the Shawnee are a very important civilization within the history of this world. They are the first to appear in the Turn Order and were the first civilization to settle their city of Prophetstown, and that makes them really the first civilization on this map. However, during the past couple of centuries, we've seen the Shoshone have developed an impressive empire. Settled in Wind River, Washakie has created an amazing tribal state. As of this moment, it looks as though the Shoshone field an impressive offensive advantage, especially with their forces centered near Chillicothe, a Shawnee settlement right on the front lines. We also know that the Comanche, who are distant relatives of the Shoshone, they have joined in the war as well, and are also pretty close to Chillicothe, so they could help in the siege as well. Either of these civilizations could potentially take the city. Over in Europe, we see the combined forces of Ukraine marching towards the Yugoslav cities of Skopje, and they do have the city of Mariupol south of Titograd. We return briefly to North America just to get a closer look at the Comanche and their states. They have 4 cities, and 3 of those cities are following their founded religion of Peyoteism. Peyoteism later becomes the Native American church, founded by religious leader of the Comanche, Quena Parker. We continue our world tour with a look at Australia under John Curtin. Australia, of course on its namesake continent, is doing pretty well for itself. The Australian Commonwealth, centered in Canberra, has a total of 7 cities thus far, and they are looking to expand by taking the settlement of Elevala from the Motu. Australia, of course, is a huge rival to the Bonuba, with 5 cities on the Australian mainland. However, they've recently been expanding into Borneo of all places. Their colonies in Borneo might have come as a shock to Sulu and its Sultan Azim Uddin I, who have already expanded into Borneo. Another grave threat to Sulu is the ever-expanding Sultanate of Malacca under Paramaswara. The Kingdom of Tonga under King Siaozi I is not doing too well for itself right now. It really could look to expand, but at least they are at a healthy city size right now. I know that Papadox Haiti is not too popular, but let's take a look at them because they are still a competitor, even if they're a more villainous one. Compared to Tonga, they've shown healthy expansion and have a great city size in 3 of their cities. In South Asia, we see the Mughal Empire growing vast and prosperous. They've taken 2 cities, both of which were originally Apsharid settlements. However, they took the city of Hamadan from the Achaemenids, who had captured the city previously. The Achaemenids are not doing too well right now. They have a lot of enemies and are, frankly, dwindling in power. We turn north to Central Asia to see that the Karakitai, centered in Balasagun, are doing pretty well for themselves. They have 6 cities, but of course they're sandwiched between a lot of different powers, with their best route of expansion being the Apsharids. Here we get a look at the Khanty settlements in the southwest. The cities of Bolshoyatlim, Kazimvash, and Surgut are pretty well sized actually for a state in Siberia. The Khanty were previously at war with the Kyrgyz, and the city of Narakari looked like it might fall. However, the Khanty did make peace with the Kyrgyz and did not lose a single city during the war. Given their current size and rate of expansion, I think they show a lot of promise within this competition. We also get a look at Goryeo, who is currently at war with Mongolia, invading their states. They have a very impressive empire at this moment in time. We get a great look at the Haida, who might not be doing too well relative to other powers. However, I think they're doing pretty well for themselves given that their start is a precarious position in Skangwei. Moving on, we see that England has a total of 6 cities on the main island of Great Britain. They're doing pretty well for themselves, I think, but Of course, a major focus is currently on their naval invasion of Stettin and Elbing in Scandinavia. Prussia has to work hard to defend its colonies, but they don't have much of a navy or defensive force nearby. As we start the action up again, I do want to thank everyone for supporting the series. We see that the Shawnee are defending against the Shoshone. Here we see that Karelia is defending its capital of Kimasharvi from the invading Soviet forces. Uki Vainamoinen himself was actually a Karelian freedom fighter against the Soviet Union. We see that Mongolia is continuing to fend off against Goryeo invasion, and also Qin's invasion, but to a lesser extent. They're not fending that side off that well, honestly. I do want to point out, I love the city name you see in this scene, with Byongnando under Goryeo. Of course, Mongolia did also settle the city of Bayanhongor, which is really a fun name as well. Goryeo under Taizhou is making steady progress into Mongolia. However, I don't know if they will be able to take a city or not. We do get to see Vijayanagara actually fending off against the Achaemenids as they attempt to launch an invasion from their city of Elora into the Achaemenid cities of Kermanshah and Susa. Off to the side, we see that Theodore Roosevelt and the United States of America have declared war on the Shawnee as well. This did not end well for Theodore Roosevelt in the past, however things are looking up for them here as they have a better opportunity. Prussia is still maintaining its defense against England and their naval invasion of Stettin. Stettin has taken some damage, however the city does not look to be in danger of capture. We return to Mongolia to see the Qin invasion steadily making progress. They do have some great generals leading their army, and let's not forget they do field one of their unique units. Well, they only have one unique unit, but I feel like it's worth mentioning. Civilizations can have multiple unique units for those who are unaware of how Civilization 5 works. Karelia may have just gotten a lifeline as the Soviet Union is now dividing their forces as they invade Yugoslavia. This is another devastating diplomatic blow to Yugoslavia, who is now fending off against several European powers. In a surprise twist, we see that the Shawnee are actually pressing forward towards the Comanche city of Shupe. If you recall, the Comanche were the instigators of this conflict. Goryeo continues to try and press forward towards the Mongolian cities of Erdenet, but honestly I don't think they'll be able to take the city. In fact, even their invasion of Nalaik seems to be dwindling. Moving on, we see that Brazil is still fending off against Makushi forces attempting to invade the city of Recife. Recife is mainly defended by its vast jungles, but it does have an archer and a spearman to defend it as well. Normally, I would not think Brazil would be able to defend against the massive Makushi army. However, given the rough terrain, I honestly don't know that the Makushi will be able to take the city of Recife. I'm also very entertained by the Brazilian navy to the north attempting to invade the landlocked Makushi. We see that the Banuba and Australia are continuing to actually besiege the city of Elevala. Elevala, of course, being the Motu colony on Australia, and it is starting to take some serious damage. Speaking of serious damage, we are about to see a historic moment as a centuries-long siege finally ends as the city of Magdeburg is captured by Yugoslavia. I'm honestly impressed by Yugoslavia having taken the city of Magdeburg while facing several war declarations and also the siege of their own city of Sarajevo. However, Sarajevo now looks to be in a very good position given that it doesn't have any melee units nearby on Prussia's side that can take the city. Continuing on, we see that the Shawnee are defending against the Shoshone and their massive invasion force. The Shoshone, of course, are at war with the Shawnee, having recently joined in the conflict alongside the Comanche and now Theodore Roosevelt. This North American conflict is starting to grow massive, with various powers joining in on this coalition against the Shawnee. The Shawnee, of course, are starting to besiege the city of Shupe. However, they are at risk of losing their city of Chillicothe. Chillicothe, of course, would be a great jewel for any empire to have, with 7 population currently. And of course, it's got a nice river, it's got silk, and some salt. You know, it seems like a pretty nice place to live. The Shawnee are doing as best as they can to hold off all of these forces on these various different fronts attempting to invade their empire, and we see their defense against the Americans as well as their offenses against the Shoshone and the Comanche. Honestly, even if Tecumseh doesn't hold off in this war, I think he's done an impressive job with what he has done thus far. Sadly, it seems like the Karelian revitalization project might be a failure, as the Swedes have continued to fortify the city of Västerås, and thus it is no longer in danger of capture. As we move back to see Mongolia's defense against the Qin and Goryeo forces, I do also want to comment, it's really fun to see the various different Southeast Asian civilizations declaring war on Cyrus and the Achaemenids, considering that they don't actually have any relevant borders, but they have met Cyrus and they think he's a total dick. This recent entry to the Cyrus Hate Club is Trungtrak of Aulak. Here we see that Carthaginian Shapet, Hannibal, has declared war on Ismail ibn Sharif of the Alawites and Morocco. Carthage fields a very impressive invasion force, but we shall see how it turns out as we move quickly into Europe to see that England's navy is starting to deteriorate. It really looks like Britannia does not rule the waves. I am looking at the situation for Prussia, however, and I don't think Prussia's actually doing that well anymore. They have lost the city, and they just made peace with Josip Broz Tito, meaning that city is now lost for quite a while, until their next war with Yugoslavia at least. Despite their impressive defenses up to this point, I honestly think they might have fumbled the ball, having not made peace sooner. Qin Shi Huang, leader of Qin, is doing a pretty good job with his invasion of Mongolia, as we see that the city of Nalaik is still taking some serious damage, and he has a very impressive army marching towards the city. It does seem as though he might be able to take the city at some point. Speaking of cities taking damage, we're going to see Kimasharvi take quite a bit of damage as the Soviets are pressing closer and closer into the city. Potentially they could take the city within, I think, 2 to 3 turns. We return to North America to see that the Shawnee Coalition, or rather, the anti-Shawnee Coalition, is not doing too great, honestly. They haven't attacked the city of Chillicothe yet, and the city of Jupe is taking some serious damage. If the Comanche don't send reinforcements soon, that city could fall. I'll be honest, Goryeo has sort of fumbled here as well. Mongolia's cities of Erdenet and Ulaanbaatar are not in any real danger, and even though Nalaik is in danger, it's not from Goryeo themselves. In fact, I don't think Goryeo really stands a chance to take any cities in this war, while Qin can make some major gains. That said, if Goryeo is able to rebuild their army, they might take the new settlement of Bayan Kongor. As we move back to Europe, we can see that Yugoslavia and their front with Ukraine is starting to intensify. We can see that Ukraine has a massive army right near Skopje, and they're already fielding catapults and besieging the city. If Yugoslavia is unable to defend Skopje, that will be a major gain for Ukraine. We turn to Australia to see that the Banuba city of Demaluru is under siege by a Lagator armada sent by the Motu and the Motu leader Idai Siabo. Although I spoke previously that the Lagator does have some military benefit, it's really not much, and Idai Siabo really isn't much of a military leader, he's more of a trade leader. As an aside, Elevala drops to red health. Yugoslavia is now getting their turn, and one thing I want to comment on is that we're now seeing more unit diversity. We see catapults, which are the first siege units of the game, and we are seeing horsemen, which are mounted units. Further in Lviv, we can see that Ukraine even has a chariot archer, which is a ranged mounted unit. Army composition really does matter, so this diversity of units is key to how the game will progress moving forward. Speaking of moving forward and army composition, we see Carthage here. They have a settler on the front lines for some reason, and they have been forward settled by Nigeria with their city of Benin. Hannibal, of course, is a vicious military leader, so hopefully he'll be able to lead his people over these mountains as well. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, people speak of hearing the trees speaking Makushi as the invasion of the chief is intensifying even just slightly. That said, the city has still not taken any damage, and the Makushi really don't have a true sense of direction yet. We return to Australia to get a better look at the Motu's turn to see that they are continuing to defend the city of Elevala, but also trying to besiege the city of Dimaluru via their naval armada of Lagatoi. As an aside, I am a huge fan of the Motu design. I think it's one of the best designs. Shout out to the Civ. If you want to see all of the civilizations featured, link is in the description below to the Steam Workshop collection. Back to the start of a brand new turn, we see that the Shawnee are heavily damaging the Comanche city of Jupe, and it falls down to red health. Potentially the city could be captured this turn or the next. And in fact, I think we just saw it fall, yes. That said, the Shawnee aren't out of the clear yet. They are still facing two separate fronts, with the Shoshone invading the city of Chirikote, and America on their eastern flank trying to push for potentially even Prophetstown. That said, America's most likely target at first will likely be the city of Mequachake. Regardless, this is a good start to the war for the Shawnee under Tecumseh. Tecumseh's confederation is doing really well for itself right now. Karelia is continuing to defend their capital city of Kimasharvi, and honestly, it looks as though they might be able to keep the city. Even though the Soviet Union had damaged the city quite heavily in the previous turns, it looks as though the Soviet forces have been sort of split up, and the melee units are being targeted quite strategically by Karelia. We turn now to see the Achaemenid front with Vijayanagara. Vijayanagara has not really gotten a lot of time to shine, so I'm really happy to include these scenes because I think Vijayanagara is not only a cool civ, it's also a very pretty one. I really love the orange color. As we transition into the next scene to see Carthage and their continuing war with Morocco, I want to ask, what do you think is your favorite color scheme within the Battle Royale thus far? As always, commenting really helps support these videos and the channel. As we edge closer and closer to the final scenes of the episode, we see that England is continuing their assault on Prussia, but they seem to have changed targets to the city of Danzig in Denmark. I honestly don't think they'll be able to take the city of Danzig either, and really this has just divided their navy up. Moving forward, we see that Qin is continuing their barrage of ranged attacks against the Mongolian city of Nalaik. Of course, it seems like there's a bit of a bug with the animations for the Qin unique unit. However, we do see that those flaming arrows are launching towards the city of Nalaik, and the city finally falls. I believe it will get down to yellow health in this very scene. Yes, there we go. It does not quite fall yet. Speaking of city sieges, where the cities go to yellow health but do not quite fall, we see the Karelian capital of Kimasharvi down to yellow health. It is now at a 5 population, which is bad for Karelia and Uki Vainamoinen. The Comanche are not looking too hot right now. The Shawnee are pushing forward to potentially take the city of Yamparika from them, and I don't see the Comanche having much of any defense near the city itself. Back in Mongolia, we see that some archers have barricaded themselves in the city of Nalaik to defend the city from the invading Qin forces. The Goryeo invasion, however, seems to have faltered and died, for the most part at least. It seems like they are now following my advice and changing directions to head towards Bayan Kongor. We turn to Australia to see that the Motu city of Elavala is taking some serious damage. It is now at red health and could potentially fall within the next 2 to 3 turns. Although the Motu don't have much of a standing army, they do have an impressive navy. They are trying to besiege the city of Dimalur with their Lagatori Armada, as I've mentioned, but I honestly don't think it'll go that far, despite a pretty impressive effort thus far. Simply put, I don't think they have the numbers. Hey everyone, we finally passed the 30-minute mark. That said, there's only a few more minutes left in this episode, but we do see that Ukraine is continuing their siege of Skopje, and they have been pushing further into Ukrainian territory. They could potentially make some serious gains, as Yugoslavia does not really have defense around Sarajevo or Magdeburg currently. Of course, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is working desperately to keep his people alive in real life, so it's nice seeing him on a very strong offense here in the game itself. As we transition back to South America, we see the Makushi still haven't really made any headway into a siege of Recife. Since we are nearing the end, this is going to be my obligatory moment to say, if you enjoy watching these videos, and especially now if you enjoy this longer format we're running with, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel down below. It really helps support the show, it helps support the channel, and it lets me know that I should keep running this. For the record, to showcase how long this series is and might be, I have not finished recording it, and we are not even halfway through the recorded clips having been used up thus far. If you know anyone who is a huge fan of Civilization, either 5, 6, 7, or any of the earlier games, please be sure to recommend this series to them. I really hope they would appreciate seeing this content. With all that said, we see the Shoshone in the final scene pushing towards Chillicothe. My name has been Kazia, signing off.